Hello, I'm Matt with Mainstreet Medina, and today we're going to shoot another edition of Medina Minute. Won't you join me inside as we sit down with some friends and familiar faces from around town and learn a little bit about their stories. Well, good morning. Welcome to another edition of Medina Minute. We're here with Elaine Lamb. And then thank you so much for coming in and spending some time with me today. You have quite a history in this town. You've been here for a while.
I have.
How did you get here? Are you from here originally?
No, I'm not. I'm from Barberton.
Okay.
Right down the road.
Yeah.
A little bit.
A little piece. What brought you to Medina then?
Well, I graduated from Ohio State and met my husband at Ohio State. He was in the dental school and I was in the School of Nursing.
Okay.
I have a bachelor's in nursing.
Really?
5-year
Gosh.
degree. Yes, from Ohio State. So the medical school and the dental school were all in one part of the campus.
Yeah.
I met him and we were married in 1964.
Okay.
After, when I grew up, you got married right after college or in high school even, because that's what women did. And so that's what I did, and I was going to be a housewife and live in Medina. That's all I knew about Medina.
So you got married and moved here. How, I mean, let's be honest, you're an incredibly humble woman, but you had a very large part, at least I think you are, you had a very large part in saving this town and making it what it is today.
Yes.
Getting involved in the Community Design Committee.
Yes.
Founding member?
Yes, I was a founding member. It was in 1967.
So,
we started
brand new graduate, nursing degree, married, moved here in '64. 3 years later, you're part of this movement to save the town. How did that happen?
It happened because I'm an artist, and I see things. This is an ego thing. I see things different. Artists see things differently.
Yeah.
And when I was at Ohio State, I'd go downtown Columbus, sometimes walk, sometimes take the bus. Mm-hmm. And the buildings we call it Short North now, but it's not. It wasn't then. It was a really derelict neighborhood and long, all the way from Ohio State, which was terribly ruined with bars that we loved, of course, and then this void of people sleeping on the sidewalks and pawn stores and just real horrible. But the upstairs, when you rode the bus, you could see the upstairs of the buildings, and they were all beautiful Victorian buildings, and it got me really interested in why the ugly parts of cities in Barberton was looking at urban renewal at the same time, and that was all torn down. Their downtown was all torn down and never has been revitalized. Yeah. But it just came to Medina and saw the same thing. The downstairs of the buildings were all not derelict, but they were covered with false fronts, fake marble, tongue and groove siding, and then every store had a sign that was bigger and louder than the next store. And I was a member of American Association of University Women, AUW, and there had a annual meeting in Akron, a dinner, and a man came to speak, and his name was F. Eugene Smith, and he was an industrial designer. He designed products. He was a product designer. Mm-hmm. And he was so interested. He was from the Highland Square area that was under restoration. And he was so interested in going to different towns because towns were fading away and shopping centers were being built around them, so towns were becoming empty, town centers. And he had this program called Why Ugly, Why Not? And it was a slideshow. Mm-hmm. And it was our program for AUW dinner. And after the program was over, there were some guys sitting around the tables with their wives, and I said, man, that could help us in Medina. some kind of a restoration.
Yeah.
He made it so visual. He made the presentation so visual that he came to Medina and photographed the square, and he photographed the shopping center that was just new in the 60s, and Medina was being, it really wasn't, it was falling apart.
Yeah.
Yes. And he showed pictures, he'd flash a picture of the word Coca-Cola on the screen, and he said, "Did you see that?" And everybody would say, "Yeah, it was spelled wrong." So we don't look when we are in an environment that we're used to.
Yeah.
We really don't look at it. We take it for granted, and it just kind of falls apart.
Yeah.
And that's what was happening to Medina. It was just slowly falling apart. One of the grocery stores had changed its name to supermarket because they wanted, there was a Fisher's Foods.
Well, we can't have that in Medina.
Well, and their sign was really big, and they were scared, and they had a bakery and stuff, and people were nervous. And then there were some politicians that wanted to tear down the square, like Berea was doing at the time, and other cities like Barberton and Akron lost a whole downtown. And then build new, and new would attract people, is what the thinking was.
That's what they thought.
They didn't know that Medina had Victorian architecture. They called it colonial. That's why the courthouse across the street that was going to replace the courthouse on the corner that was, the county commissioners were going to demolish, is a colonial revived federal courthouse.
Yeah.
And one of the politicians from he was a state rep, said, "Well, you can't get an elevator in these buildings. The buildings are so rotted, and they're only colonial anyway, so put an eagle over the door and you'll have a restoration." And there were 7 of us that came together.
I gotta tell you why I'm laughing.
Yeah.
My mom's best friend was an antique dealer for a very long time, and I learned a lot from her. But they had a running joke that to make it early American, paint it flat black and put an eagle on it. And that's what everybody was doing. Oh my gosh. So that's what they were going to do in the courthouse. Just put an eagle on it.
Yeah, well, they were going to demolish it, actually. The county commissioners had already started the plan, and they were having a public meeting of people that wanted to come and see their new plan, which was the architectural drawing of the courthouse that sits beside the Victorian courthouse.
Yeah.
And people came, and there was a group of women that I started talking to. The Gazette was there, and said, "Wow, that's really awful." We were very upset about it because the courthouse was painted red, and a lot of the parts were missing. Okay. But it still had the grandeur that it has now. And one of our members, Bill Boyle, was working with Disney and Smuckers, and he had a photograph of the courthouse, and that if you go to Disney in Florida, you will see a similar building.
Yeah.
And they, of course, Smuckers had their jellies store there on Main Street. And there were these people that came together to form the CDC that we all met at AUW. It was the right time, the right people, the right needs for the town. And we decided that we needed to save the courthouse, number one, and get it registered with the National Trust, which you could do without approval of the owners. So we went to the meeting. The Gazette wrote a fabulous article and a cartoon that said there was a firestorm of protests, and it was like the courthouse had flames coming out of it or something.
Which is not funny because we have a history of fire here. So that was not funny, Gazette, but I get it.
But anyway, we stopped the demolition.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
With public, the public was really protested.
It just said no.
Yeah. And then the county commissioners decided to build the new courthouse next door. So that's why it's there, and the beauty of the Victorian courthouse has been preserved, and the county commissioners have done a great job with every detail. The cornices on the top of the columns were in the dump, and they went and got them, the ionic, the beautiful columns, and put them back, and they've done a lot of things over the years, as you know. And it was chemically cleaned at one time, the red paint was taken off, the brick was restored. It's just a focal point of the square. If we had lost that, I don't know that the design committee would have been able to continue.
So what do you think would have happened if not for that fateful presentation by Mr. Eugene Smith, Why Ugly, Why Not? If you hadn't gone to that and you hadn't met people and you hadn't gotten married and moved here, would we have what we have today?
Maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure, because that was, urban renewal was a government funded program.
Yeah, clear it out.
Clear it out, build it new. You can go to Berea and see what they've done, and Barberton, which has a McDonald's now downtown, but they were not able to grow the restoration for redevelopment. Akron cut their street, Main Street, in half and built a bridge.
Yeah.
It's
where,
I don't know. I think that the one part I wanted to say was the slideshow that Gene Smith showed at the end. He showed the cemetery with America the Beautiful playing behind it. And that was so startling, because you have to die to have beauty around you and good style around you.
Yeah.
And then he panned the square at the same time. Why do people, why do we get used to living in substandard areas, or areas that aren't beautiful?
I agree with you, yes. Do you think it's because it's such a slow transition that we just don't notice it? Because like you said, we don't generally look. It's noise in our daily life.
It is. I think we get used to it.
Yeah. Almost take it for granted?
Yes, and take it for granted, and people, then you lose it, slowly lose it, and the buildings deteriorate, and they come to the point where people say they can't be rehabbed. Of course they can.
Of course they can, right.
But that was the, so the idea was to have one thing to show the people. And Mayor Greenwood was the mayor at the time, and we drew, well, one of the graphic artists, Ken Lipstrew, drew a picture of the firehouse, painted red, and the signs down.
Iconic today.
Yes.
Yeah.
And people were like, oh my God, that's what was under that. And with the air conditioners sticking out of the windows and the big sign, fight fire with money or something. I don't know. There was a big sign over
prevention or something. Yeah. I know what photo you mean. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, anyway, and it was dirty yellowish gray.
Yeah.
And it stood out like a sore thumb on that side of the street. And one of our members wrote for the Gazette, and one of her phrases was, "A picture's worth 1,000 words," and that is really true. You can talk a lot about restoration, and you can talk a lot about redoing stuff, but you cannot. If you don't have a picture, just talk.
You got to show them.
Yeah, you got to. So that was our idea, to make renderings, not restorations, but renderings. A gallon of paint, whatever the business could afford, or the owner. We didn't want to be connected with the city. We wanted to move faster, and we didn't want to charge people. So there were two graphic artists, Elmer Zarni, who was a wonderful artist, and Ken Lipstrew. And they were the ones that did the drawings and presented the drawing to the owner with the paint colors, possibly what can you do. They weren't thinking of taking it way back to gas lights, but using modern technology that was available now. And to do the restoration, and then signage was an important thing, and the city did eventually help us with the signage. And the businesses were very happy to change their signage when they saw the building, the rendered building of theirs. Some people weren't. Revco was a pharmacy, and they were a holdout for a long time, but
eventually. Yeah.
And yes.
I think it's so important that you had renderings created, because, as you said, you're an artist. You have that vision, but a lot of people don't. And it's a tool, to educate them. So you went to nursing school, but you're an incredibly creative woman and very talented. You had Mud Mother's pottery, still do.
Still do.
Still do, still throwing pots.
Yep.
Where does that artistic side of you come from? Like, have you always been creative as a child?
I think so, yes. Okay. Yes, I was. And my family's history from Germany, I had an uncle, Alois Schonenberger, and he was an artist, and he worked for Goodyear and designed patents for them.
Okay.
I don't know, I just always liked art.
Yeah.
And my father told me and this is what women did in the 60s. My father said I needed something to fall back on, so art was not in his
gotcha.
Level of payment options for Ohio State.
That wasn't a career plan for you.
No. So, and I was a future nurse at Arborton High School in their group, and I thought I wanted to do that, but I never really did. I took all my electives at Ohio State were in art.
Yeah. How did you, I'm fascinated by artists because I'm not. I'm a decent designer, but I'm not an artist.
You are.
How does an artist focus in on their major? Like some can draw, some can paint, some can sculpt. You're a sculptor, you're a ceramicist. Is that something that just as you're going through school you really like it, or you find out that you're very good at it? How do you choose your area?
I think it's something I could do. I wasn't a great, I always loved drawing, and of course kids colored a lot when they were colored a lot when I was little. But I always liked drawing and making things, and it was that 1950s outside all day being creative ideas one after another that we did, and nobody cared.
Sure.
Nobody watched us.
Yeah.
We put on plays, we put on, did all kinds of things on our own.
Just, to use your imagination.
To use our creativity.
Yeah.
But I think that when I first took my first pottery class was at Akron U.
Okay.
I had two or three daughters by then, and it was an elective that I wanted to do, and I just fell in love with it.
Yeah.
It was just natural for me. And one thing about pottery is when it's in its wet stage, it's not permanent. So if you can't do it the way you want to, you just crush it up and re-wedge it and start over. I took a watercolor class, which I thought was really bad and hard, because you put these wonderful shades of color on your paper, and then they get grayer and grayer and muddier, and I thought, that's not for me. That was really hard for me. But ceramics was easy, and I liked it. It's physical, you move around a lot, and I'm not a good sitter.
Yeah, and you had a store on South Court for many years, didn't you?
I bought that, and I started at Victorian Village, which is where the parking lot of the library is, in the house that it has been moved to California, was moved bit by bit.
Okay, that's where your store was originally.
Reinhardt House, which was historical and beautiful Italianate. And that's now near San Francisco on the Russian River. Almost burned down last year.
Did it really?
Almost, but didn't make it to that house.
It has that Medina curse.
Yeah.
So you were in Victorian Village on East Washington.
Yes, for 12 years.
Okay.
And that was a great incubator area for people that wanted to have a business. And I did, and Sarah Ingram was my partner.
Yeah.
And we both had each 3 little kids, so we called ourselves Mud Mothers, was how we got our name.
Was she a potter as well?
Yes.
Okay.
She graduated from the Art Institute. I only have I don't have a degree in art. I have a BS, Bachelor of Science.
But you have a gift in art.
Yeah,
and we're not going to displace that.
No, we won't. I just always feel like the Wizard of Oz, the Tin Man not having no heart, or the Lion not having no heart, or something. No, but I've taken lots of classes.
Okay.
I'm a lifelong learner.
Yeah. And you're still active today. You do shows all over the place.
COVID kind of
put a kibosh on that.
For a while, but now they're starting again.
Yeah. I've seen some of your earlier work, and I love, I'll call today like your shadow work or silhouette work. How has your work evolved over time? Or is it just like what's processing up here that comes out down here?
I think it's just my sense of positive thinking is really important. You have to be positive when you're an artist because you have to create every part of your business.
Yeah.
And it's not, people have told me so many times at shows or places that I've seen collectors and they say, oh, I tried that, I couldn't do it, and how can you make enough money? And I get I've gotten the whole line of why it can't be done. And it's true that
it can be.
It can be, but you treat it like a job. And that's what I wanted to do, and that's what Sarah wanted to do. We wanted to make a business out of it.
And you've been doing it
45 years.
45 years. I was going to say 50.
Almost.
Okay.
And then Victorian Village. I was in Victorian Village for a while, 12 years, and then that building where Raspberry and Roses came up for sale.
Yeah. Okay.
And the price was good, and a friend of mine was a realtor for it, and she said, "You want to look at that building?" And I said, "Sure." I bought it.
There you go. So you became literally an investor in the revitalization of what goes on. Do you still own that building?
No,
Is that still
I
yours?
sold it to build my studio at home.
Yeah.
In 2000. So it's been 21 years now that I've had my studio that I built.
Yeah. You've been you are, I don't mean to say you've been like you're not, but you are such a part of this community. What to you has been maybe the greatest transformation or the evolution of the city as a whole? Are we still going forward? Have we kind of stopped? Where do you think we are in that whole spectrum of?
When I first met you, I knew what was going to happen. The square was ready with the restoration. When we first started the square at 5 o'clock, there wasn't a car on the square.
That's true.
It was a county seat, so there was a lot of business going on during the day, but at night, nothing. And we had read books from Savannah and other restoration places that were doing significant restorations in the 60s through the help of the National Trust. And we thought we could do that if we created events. We had some events, but when you came with Mainstreet, that was the icing on this beautiful cake.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
It made this place alive.
It's hopping.
Oh my gosh.
You can tell just from the traffic going by. What do you think the future holds for Medina? Like, where do you see the city going, or on what would you like to see the city focus? How do we keep that level of what you started 50-some, I'm terrible at math.
That's okay.
Over 50 years ago. Good. All right, we share that.
Some time ago.
What do you think still needs to be addressed?
Housing.
Okay.
I don't want to see, if you look around at cities, you can see that the housing goes farther and farther back from the inner ring of the city. And then people have to drive. That has not been created here yet.
Not yet.
But Southtown is a restoration area now that could have condos housing for people who want to live near this wonderful shopping area and restaurant and fun area. People come from all over to see it. But I think housing, I'm glad I have a house on South Court, which we have just recently sold, but we rented a loft in Farmers Exchange.
Okay,
because we want to be close. Still only have a little bit of our foot on the ground here.
Sure.
And that, I think, is the future of what could happen around the town. Not that the stores and restaurants aren't great, because they attract, and the farmers market and all the events that you have attract thousands and thousands of people.
Yeah.
But that's the one thing that might just solidify the way the square stays forever.
Yeah.
Is to have still humans living around it. And when it was,
I like that.
When the square was first, of course, built, you had to have housing around it because there were horses and wagons, and you couldn't drive 3 hours.
Couldn't just jump in your car and go. Right. I'm curious, do Do your children share your love of history?
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
Pretty much.
I'm trying to give them stuff from our house. They don't want anything, but no, yes. My one daughter lives in Highland Square.
Okay.
In a, I don't know the architecture, kind of a barn-like, can't think of what that architecture is, house.
Okay, like a gambrel roof?
Yes.
And that barn roof?
Yes,
nice.
On Doppler.
Yeah.
By the dry cleaners. It's an inner ring suburb of Akron.
Sure.
And that area is what Gene Smith was on the progress through preservation of that area. And his office was there.
Okay.
But yes, my daughter Gretchen and my other 2 daughters are not interested probably.
Yeah. Did any of them inherit your artistic gene?
Maybe in the way they think about decorating and their lifestyle.
Yeah.
More about their lifestyle, because the earth and the environment have always been very important to me, and I think
that's right.
They have shown that.
Yeah. Okay.
And lived that way.
If you, I love this question because I never know the answer. Money was no limit. Time was no limit.
I love that question.
Transportation, no limit. What would be your dream trip?
Oh, trip.
Yeah. What did you think I was going to ask you?
I thought you were going to ask what would I buy.
We'll do that one next because I'm curious.
All the land in Montville Township that was empty.
We'll do that now. To protect it? Okay, for like parks? Are you part of the Land Conservancy group?
I was on the board for 25 years.
Okay, so that's a hard yes.
The Western Reserve Land Conservancy merged with the Medina. We merged with the other land conservancies in the Western Reserve. It was called the Medina Summit Land Conservancy originally.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have preserved and I'm not on the board anymore. I'm not on so many boards, but the one focus for Medina County was to keep Champion Creek wild. And that has been done a lot.
Yeah.
So animals can walk and go from one place to another. Champion Creek and Rocky River are navigable in the northern part of the county. And people can canoe, there's herring rookeries, and a lot of preservation is going on around there.
I think that goes back to kind of your point that people don't look. We have this really cool waterway going right through the center of town. We just ignore it for the most part. There's a little bit over by, was it Spokes? You know, that's really pretty and you can see it. But it's like there's little waterfalls and it's this natural habitat that we've enclosed and kind of covered over. I love that.
I'd buy all the riparian corridor and restore it so it didn't flood all the time.
Okay.
Take out some of the roads that are flooding so that it makes it bigger.
I love that.
Never mind.
That's okay. No, I am curious though, what would be your dream trip? Your vacation?
It wouldn't have to be in the United States.
If you want to go to Mars, wherever you want to go.
No, I don't want to go to Mars. Portugal.
Why Portugal? That's interesting. Most people say like Spain or France.
Oh, Spain's pretty nice. Spain's lovely. It's not the same as Portugal.
Have you been there before?
It's more wealthy, yeah. We've been to Spain. And we were going to do Portugal and Spain all together, but we couldn't. We had too much to do in Spain. But we always take trains, and we went to Portugal 3 years ago, so I guess someone told me the last place you go is where you want to go again, instead of trying something new. But
that's true.
Portugal is different because it was not a democracy until the 70s.
Oh, wow, okay.
And it was, I can't remember the names of the people that were ruling it, but the Carnation Revolution took over, and the protesters put carnations in the army's rifles, and it changed to a democracy. But very poor democracy. They had been probably the strongest country of Europe at one time with their explorations, and it just had deteriorated because of it was a communist country.
Okay.
And that wasn't important. But I think the people are so kind. They're different. They're kind of a Croatian and Spanish mix.
Okay.
Portuguese is a mixture of Spanish and Croatian, whatever that language is. It's very hard to speak it. But the people are kind, it's safe, they're forward-thinking, they're going to be green, 100% solar.
Oh, wow.
They use bamboo to make just about every cloth thing and flooring, and that's a renewable resource. They're forward-thinking now. Their museums are being restored. They belong to the EU.
Okay.
So they have loans from the European Union to do the restoration. It's just a beautiful country.
You make me want to go there now.
Oh, go.
I'm going to add it to the list.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's easy to get around. The train systems are good.
Okay. Okay. What, at the end of the day, what do you want to leave as your legacy for this community? Now, I'm not saying we're going anywhere, but like what kind of moving
on to a new adventure.
Yes, and that's a good way to put it. But looking back, what do you hope people say, boy, Elaine Lamb did this, or Elaine Wells Lamb did this, started this, affected this?
It's not important that they say that, but
no, but
I do.
But what is your mark on town? Because I think it's
yeah.
important to recognize what you have done.
Right. Yeah, I think people will probably look that up. Maybe go to the Historical Society. I don't know how people do that.
Probably a lot of ways.
Yeah, I suppose. Well, just like we found the owner of who built our house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There are a lot of old gazettes.
Yeah, page by page.
Yeah. Legacy would be that my house, of course, which was a wreck in an apartment, that I think was the first house that was kind of thought of being restored.
Okay.
And that came up to its beauty that it has now.
Yeah.
And it hopefully will be registered with the National Trust soon. It's on its way.
Oh, fantastic. How cool. Good.
Sarah Marson, your friend from Heritage, Ohio, did the research.
Fantastic.
For 2 years, spent a lot of time in our house with an architect.
Yeah, okay.
And it went through the Heritage, Ohio. We were at the Zoom meeting.
Good, cool, cool.
And it was sent on to the National Trust.
Okay.
I don't know how long that'll take.
I don't know what that process
but that, to me, the restoration, the start of the restoration on South Court was important.
Sure.
Residential connection is important with the square. I think what you're doing is important. Southtown is important. All these pieces and parts to put together for what we have is done by so many people.
It's got to come like this. It's everyone working together.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Without anger and arguing.
Because that doesn't get you anywhere.
No, or negativity.
Yeah.
And I think that the power of positive thinking is so important. When you start out with an idea, it can't be why we can't do it.
That's true.
You've got to start with brainstorming every little positive thing. And that's how we started the CDC. We sat for weeks.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? What are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And it just comes together when you have brains of people who are like-minded. You can think of those things.
That's cool.
And take them to the next step.
Yeah. Elaine, thank you so much for your time today. I've enjoyed hearing your connection, your history of town. Wish you the best of luck and look forward to seeing you around town and seeing you on the square at events and catching up with you at another time.
Hoping to do Art in the Park this summer.
Good. Good. Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for all you've done.